All right, welcome back to the First Trade. As coronavirus cases spike across the country, there's been a lot of attention on the federal response or lack thereof. Here to talk about it is someone who knows the U.S. health system better than most and has been in the room when those big White House decisions get made. Former Utah Governor Mike Leavitt was the head of Health and Human Services and the EPA under President George W. Bush, and he joins us now. Governor Leavitt, good to see you this morning here. So you were in that room handling when we were dealing with the avian flu. What did you do then that the government isn't doing now?
Well, important to acknowledge that there is something for everyone to do in a pandemic. There's a role for the federal government, there's a role for local government, and there's a role for non-government organizations. We all have to be involved in this. But let's talk about what the role of the federal government is. There are some things that only the federal government can do. For example, vaccines, testing, medication, and their approval. That's a federal role, and they need to focus on that. Another would be stabilization of the economy. Only the federal government can stabilize the economy. Foreign relations, there's a lot of foreign interaction that goes on because this is a global setting. Again, only the federal government can do that. Supplementing crisis resources for states. We've seen the federal government put a lot of money into state and local health departments. That's a unique thing that the federal government can do. Coordinating procurement, creating situational awareness where they can gather data from all of the states. These are things that the federal government is uniquely able to do. And it's better when the federal government focuses on the things they can uniquely do and do them well. States, on the other hand, they have a lot to do as well. They are the boots on the ground, if you will, and they have to develop risk frameworks and adjudicate it and make the hard decisions about should schools open or should they not. So a role for everyone, Brian.
I want to, Governor, bounce off of what you just mentioned lastly there about the reopening of schools. You've sort of been on the both sides of this at the federal level, at the HHS, and then at the local level, at the state level as governor of Utah. Trump now, the president is saying he may withhold funding from states if they don't reopen schools in a meaningful way come this fall. What do you make of that? And should the federal government have a hand in the reopening of schools?
I'm not inclined to believe that the federal government ought to be making decisions about when schools open. I think those are decisions that ought to be made at the local level. In my own state, for example, there are areas where there have been no coronavirus incidents. And then there are those that are spiking, and the schools ought to be treated differently in both of those areas. And Washington, D.C. just can't be that selective. They do not have the ability to operate with that kind of precision. Now, the president has a point of view here. He's obviously making it known. But ultimately, the decision on whether schools open ought to be made at the state and local level and not the federal level.
I do want to quickly get some breaking news out there. Hold tight, Governor. We're getting breaking news. Supreme Court says New York grand jury can get the president's tax returns. The Supreme Court hasn't ruled just yet in the House subpoena case. But Governor Leavitt, I want to stay on this topic of schools real quickly here. Based on your knowledge of how we've been handling COVID-19, the pandemic, is it safe for schools to reopen in the fall?
In some areas, it's highly problematic, in my view. In others, could probably be accomplished. Again, it goes back to dealing with this on a blanket basis. This is a big country. There are 14,000 school districts and hundreds of and thousands more schools. And so dealing with this on they should open or close is really not dealing with the issue. We ought to be laying out principles, that is to say, the pillars of wisdom and allowing people then to govern themselves within that. Governors are in a better position to make those decisions than Washington is. And for that matter, school boards are probably in a position to make even better decisions than governors. Again, very individualized. When you consider that you have 14,000 districts, it's just a mistake to try to do that in one place.
Governor, you've been warning, and a lot of people in public health have been warning about that second wave of the virus come the fall. Do you believe that we are prepared as a nation for that second wave?
We're better prepared for the second than we were the first. And the third, we'll be better prepared for that. Pandemics are really tough. And the dilemma is that we don't naturally take them seriously enough before they happen. I've said many times that the problem with even talking about pandemics is that anything you say in advance sounds alarmist, and after it happens, anything you've done seems inadequate. It's difficult for government leaders. It's difficult for corporate leaders for that very reason. We're getting better at this, and we have to, because it's likely it'll be around for quite a while. Even if we have a vaccine, we're going to be dealing with a virus that's alive in the wild, and it's going to be moving around, and it's going to have it's going to take its course. And once we have a vaccine, once we have medications that can mitigate the symptoms, that will help. But we're going to have to learn to navigate an entirely new set of risks and align the way we operate with that new level of risk.
Governor, you have recently joined the Healthy Sales Panel, along with former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb. What are you advising the major cruise lines? How can they get back in business and do so safely?
Well, the cruise lines are under an obligation to demonstrate to regulators that they are able to operate in this new atmosphere with coronavirus. This is a new risk. And logically, passengers want to know, regulators want to know, and the cruise lines want to know, what's the best way for us to operate successfully? So we are working to populate their thinking and to populate their planning with the best available public health advice, with the best scientific advice and the best engineering advice. And we've assembled a panel of people who are highly experienced and seasoned and have good judgment, and then we have access to experts on various subject matter areas, and we're just helping them figure out how to align with this new area of risk. Candidly, it's the same thing that every business in America is having to do in one form or another, and we're just helping the cruise industry, who, like everyone else, has some unique challenges.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.